The play The Shadow Factory by Howard Brenton shows British resistance to any form of authoritarianism while keeping its roots firmly in Southampton life. The Guardian review states, even if Brenton stretches it a bit by suggesting that the anti-authority mood of 1940 laid the foundation of the Labour election victory 5 years later, the play unearths a fascinating piece of local history. But does it? How far does the play stretch the truth to make a political point? In fact, the real Shadow Factory was not in Southampton at all. When researching the official archives for his book, Spitfire Portrait of a Legend, Leo McKinstry found that there were severe difficulties in manufacturing the Spitfire, which challenged the romantic myth of a determined people all pulling in the same direction. A report by Sir Richard Ferry, which is contained on microfilm in the Vicar's archive but is not discussed in any Spitfire literature, provides an insight into the shambles of the real Shadow Factory. The distinguished aircraft manufacturer paints a picture of extravagance and an inability to understand the problems of aircraft production, coupled with an unwillingness to learn from those who do. The need for a new Shadow Factory was apparent given that Supermarine at Southampton were given an order for hundreds of Spitfires in 1936, but none were delivered by early 1938. Subcontractors were blamed, but it became clear that the limited space at Southampton would never be able to cope with the expected demand for aircraft. At one point, the government was close to completely transferring Spitfire production away from Supermarine in Southampton, but in the end this threat came to nothing, and the additional capacity would be provided by a new Shadow Factory. However, Lord Nuffield did not get on with Lord Swinton, the Air Minister, and refused to participate in the Shadow Factory programme. In a debate in 1938, the Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, claimed that the Spitfire was the fastest fighter in service anywhere in the world, and that it is shortly coming into service. To which the reply came, but it is not in the service of any country in the world. That is precisely one of our complaints. In May 1938, bowing to a storm of criticism over Britain's air deficiency, Lord Swinton resigned. Undaunted, when Kingsley Wood took over as Secretary of State for Aircraft Production, he offered Lord Nuffield a blank cheque to build a Shadow Factory where he wanted, which was Castle Bromwich near Birmingham. The government lavished £7 million on the Nuffield factory, but the money was ill spent. Men and machines lay idle, buildings unfinished. Nuffield had claimed he could produce 60 Spitfires a week, but by May 1940 not one had been built. The mess at Castle Bromwich had become intolerable. When the press tycoon Lord Beaverbrook was appointed by Churchill as Minister for Aircraft Production in May 1940 after the fall of Neville Chamberlain's government, his first action was to sack Nuffield and hand over the plant to Vickers, the parent company of Supermarine. In an almost legendary telephone conversation, Lord Beaverbrook berated Lord Nuffield over his failures. Beaverbrook's criticism so enraged Lord Nuffield that he sarcastically suggested that Lord Beaverbrook should see if he could do any better, to which Lord Beaverbrook curtly responded by saying that he accepted Lord Nuffield's offer, slammed the phone down and promptly took over the factory in May 1940. But a subsequent secret report commissioned by Beaverbrook revealed the full extent of the shambles. Sir Richard Ferry's report on the new Shadow Factory went on to reveal further waste on buildings, expensive heating systems, and enormous steel hangars. Records were hopelessly unreliable. He said, I myself inspected a number of boxes of components and parts that had literally been raked out from under the working benches and for which no records existed. Furthermore, Castle Bromwich had ignored the tooling work done by Supermarine, had instead started to design and plan its own tools, even altering the manufacturing limits of Supermarine drawings for reasons which are quite incomprehensible. The whole conception was not good, since the reason for spending so much capital on tools and machinery should be to produce an even flow of parts in the numbers required. However, Ferry's harshest criticism was reserved for the Castle Bromwich employees, which is interesting in the context of the mythology of pulling together in the patriotic cause in the play The Shadow Factory. As far as Ferry was concerned, overriding all these considerations, and in my opinion the greatest obstacle to an immediate increase in output, is the fact that the labour is in very bad state. Discipline is lacking. Men are leaving before time and coming in late, taking evenings off when they think fit. Ferry's views could be tainted by rivalry, but the supermarine engineer Cyril Russell had many colleagues sent up to Birmingham to help out with parts and drawings, and he heard directly from them how there were a lot of squabbles over money. How Castle Bromwich employees stopped work for financial greed, the cumulative result ensured that no Spitfires reached the flight testing stage. To Ferry's anger, the management had frequently caved into such pressure, with the result that those on the Castle Bromwich payroll earned much more than those at Supermarine. The sheer technical idiocy of some of the early Castle Bromwich line workers was also revealed by another Supermarine expert, Bill Cox, again sent from Southampton. Cox was talking to a worker about the stressed skin construction of the Spitfire when the elderly fitter replied, "Make things with aluminium, not bloody likely. That stuff is okay for pots and pans, but we're going to make things to beat the Nazis. We'll use iron." Cox also listened to a senior Castle Bromwich manager saying that the elliptical wing should be redesigned because the air would not know the difference between straight and curved leading edges. So adamant was this manager about changing the design that Cox had to get on the phone to Joe Smith at Supermarine and warn him of this problem. Immediately, Smith contacted the Air Ministry and a civil servant was dispatched to Birmingham with the message that all drawings must be made to Supermarine's orders. Beaverbrook was eager to show that Castle Bromwich was being turned around, so he instructed the factory to build 10 Spitfires before the end of June. But the new Vickers managers knew that there was little chance of meeting this deadline, given the disarray at Castle Bromwich, so they resorted to a devious stratagem, as Stan Woodley recorded, by shipping up from Southampton large numbers of finished components, including some fully equipped fuselages, and working round the clock, the magic 10 in June were completed. The 10, in fact, came from the consignment of Spitfires ordered by Turkey, which was cancelled due to the escalation of the war. Even after the first Spitfires came off the Castle Bromwich production line, there remained tremendous problems at the factory, not least because the buildings had not even been completed. 2 years after Sir Kingsley Wood had cut the first sod, parts of Castle Bromwich were still like a construction site. Gradually, during the summer of 1940, the Vickers team began to transform the management of the factory through the creation of efficient record stores and production lines, as well as through the sacking of idle or troublesome employees. In the new climate of well-organized determination, output increased rapidly. In July, 23 aircraft were produced. 37 followed in August. By the end of October 1940, 195 were delivered from Castle Bromwich. The chronic delay in producing Spitfires had severe consequences for the fabric of fighter command. The desperate tactics that Dowding had to use to protect his dwindling numbers would have been unnecessary. Much of the bitter controversy between the group commanders, caused by arguments over fighter resources, could have been avoided. The play The Shadow Factory is the type of claptrap that relies on jingoism. Archives show how the real Shadow Factory was beset by labour unrest, which nearly cost the Battle of Britain. Eventually, under better management, the revitalised Castle Bromwich workforce was turning out more than 300 Spitfires a month, in total over 13,000.